Have you ever felt like your life is just walking down a long, winding road and you're all alone? You're unsure of exactly where you're heading. Each turn seems to bring more questions than answers. Maybe you're carrying the weight of unmet expectations, dreams that haven't even been fulfilled, or maybe you're dealing with a major crisis in your family. Whatever it is, you feel overwhelmed and you feel hopeless right now. You would give anything to have something reliable to lean on, a source of direction and support that can guide you through the uncertainty. Well, what if you're not walking the road alone? What if there was someone beside you ready to offer comfort in the times of crisis and guidance when you need it the most? Today, we're going to explore what that would look like as we continue our series on encounters with Jesus. Thank you for joining me on More to Life.
It's a quiet morning in the house. The hum of a laptop fan blends with the soft, cheerful tone of a familiar children's story. At the kitchen table with colorful toys, the wife sits, her expression animated as she records yet another tale for her social media followers. She picks up a toy, twirling it as she speaks, her voice full of life and love. From the living room, her husband glances up, mid-rep in his weightlifting routine. He shakes his head, a bemused smirk tugging at his lips. That's what she's been up to, he mutters to himself, not unkindly, but with a tone that suggests he just doesn't quite get it.
This struggle to find direction isn't unique to our generation. Throughout history, people have looked for guidance and meaning during times of confusion and hardship. There's a story that speaks powerfully to this universal experience. It's the journey of two individuals who felt completely lost after their world was turned upside down. They were searching for answers, trying to make sense of their circumstances, much like many of us today. On the road to a village called Emmaus, these two men walked together, carrying the heavy burdens of disappointment and grief. They had placed their hopes in a future that now seemed impossible, and they were filled with doubt and uncertainty. But little did they know that a stranger would join them on that journey, a stranger who would change their perspective entirely. This encounter would reveal that they were never alone, and that guidance was available to them all along. Their story is a powerful reminder that even in life's darkest moments, there is hope. We too might have a companion walking alongside us, ready to guide us towards clarity and provide us with meaning and purpose. Today, we'll explore their story and discover how it resonates with our own search for direction and fulfillment.
Later, he's in the kitchen, spooning yogurt into a bowl, his movements deliberate but relaxed. She finishes her recording session and joins him. The air between them is warm as they exchange smiles. "What's all this?" he asks, motioning toward the table still strewn with toys. "I'm building something," she says simply, her eyes shining with passion. He chuckles, shaking his head. "You already have a job. Do you really need to add this?" His tone is gentle but carries a hint of disapproval. She shrugs and changes the subject, avoiding confrontation.
The story is found in Luke chapter 24, and it takes place 2 days after Jesus had died on the cross. Could there have been a greater tragedy for his followers? I mean, the one they thought was the Messiah, the one who was going to establish a new kingdom and liberate them from Roman oppression, or so they thought, the one prophesied about by the prophets long ago, well, he was now dead, sealed in a tomb. Loss can be hard to cope with, and the grief that comes with that loss can sometimes blur our vision. It can derail us and make us feel like life's on pause. When we place our hope in something or someone and it's suddenly taken away from us, it can leave us without hope or a sense of direction. Many of Jesus' followers left everything to follow him, and now that he was gone, they were left wondering, how are they going to pick up the pieces and move on with their lives? Well, we know the rest of the story. We know that Sunday morning, Jesus arose from the dead and came out of the tomb, conquering death itself. But there were two men who hadn't heard the news yet. As they slowly walked west from Jerusalem to make the journey to the town of Emmaus, about a day's journey, a stranger shows up walking beside them and starts up a conversation. The Bible tells us that this stranger was actually Jesus, but somehow they were kept from recognizing him. Watch how Jesus starts up a conversation with them and then how they respond. Verse 17 to 19 says, "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" They stopped short, sadness written across their faces. Then one of them, Cleopas, replied, "You must be the only person in Jerusalem who hasn't heard about all the things that have happened there the last few days." "What things?" Jesus asked. Now, obviously, Jesus knew what had happened. I mean, he was at the center of it. But he's asking them to see if they really knew what had happened. As the two men shared their grief and confusion about the death of Jesus, they also mentioned the perplexing news from one of the women in their group who claimed that Jesus' tomb was now empty and that the angel had said that he was alive. Jesus gently challenges them for their slowness to believe, what the prophets had written about long ago. He then began to explain to them, using the scriptures, all the things concerning himself, starting from the beginning. Starting from Moses, he showed them that the Messiah would have to come, and he would have to die the way he died to set his people free. As they approached Emmaus, the disciples urged him to come in and stay with them since it was nearly evening, and Jesus agreed. And during the meal that they had that evening, Jesus took some bread, he gave thanks, and he broke it and began to give it to each one of them. And right at that moment, their eyes were opened. They recognized him, and then all of a sudden, he disappeared from their sight. Astonished and filled with joy, my favorite verse in this story is verse 32, where it says, "They said to each other, 'Didn't our hearts burn within us as he talked with us on the road and explained the scriptures to us?'" Without delay, these men returned to Jerusalem to share their experience with the other disciples, affirming that the Lord had indeed risen and had appeared to them. I can only imagine that these two men on the road to Emmaus were overwhelmed with confusion and disappointment. Their expectations of Jesus as the Messiah who would free them from the Romans was crushed by his crucifixion. And in their grief, they couldn't comprehend what had happened or what to believe anymore. And despite Jesus being physically right beside them, the disciples did not recognize that it was him. It's the same in our own lives, isn't it? We often face moments of grief and loss, whether it's because of a broken friendship, a lost job, or maybe the sudden death of a loved one, or something else. And it's in those moments where we can feel like we're walking alone. Trying to make sense of the events leaves us hopeless and helpless. The truth is that we may not always perceive Jesus walking with us, especially when we're consumed by our own worries. But what if he is there? What if you realize that you're not walking alone through life or by yourself at all? One of the truths we've been discovering during this season of More to Life is that Jesus meets us where we are, and he walks beside us through the ups and downs of life.
The next morning, he's heading out the door, dressed for work, and they share a quick kiss goodbye. "Don't work too hard," she calls after him, the faintest hint of irony in her voice. She sets up her workspace for her part-time online job. The clatter of her keyboard fills the quiet house as she focuses on spreadsheets and emails. Her brow furrows with concentration. Hours pass, and though her work is productive, her heart feels detached. As she finishes a meeting, she remembers the toys again, her fingers itching to reach for them instead of her keyboard. This is her life. A good job, steady work, and responsibilities she carries with pride. But her stories, they're where her passion lives.
Being a follower of Jesus doesn't mean that you won't face any challenges in life. What it does mean is that He is there with you, and one day He promises to restore what was lost and make things right. As author Max Lucado once said, God never said that the journey would be easy, but He did say that the arrival would be worthwhile. So if you're going through something difficult in your life right now, know that He walks together with you. Even when you don't recognize His presence, He is there. He's ready to listen. He's ready to provide comfort. His presence can be a source of hope for you today because you know you're not walking alone. Not only is He with you and offers you comfort, but He also provides guidance. When the disciples expressed their confusion about the situation, Jesus turned to the scriptures to provide clarity. He explained how the events that had transpired were a fulfillment of prophecy concerning the Messiah. Through this, He was helping them understand why the events took place the day before yesterday, and it helped shift their perspective. Sometimes when we're faced with tough decisions in life, it can help to have a change in perspective. Just as Jesus used the scriptures to teach and guide these two men, we too have the same access to the same resource today. You may be asking, well, how do I know if I can really trust the scriptures? Isn't the Bible just an old book of fables and fantasy? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here are 3 of the many reasons I believe you can trust the Bible. Number 1, it's the #1 best-selling book of all time. According to estimates, it has sold approximately 5 billion copies globally, which far surpasses any other title in terms of total sales. This information is supported by sources like Guinness World Book of Records, which recognize the Bible as the best-selling book as of 1995. Number 2, its message is consistent. It's amazing how unified the message of the Bible is, considering it was written by approximately 40 different authors from all different backgrounds and walks of life, and written over the span of 1,500 years. Taking all of this into consideration, it's amazing to see the consistency of the message across its 66 books. Number 3, it's reliable. Consider the prophecies about Jesus that He shared with the 2 men walking to Emmaus. According to Jewish historian who later became a Christ follower, Alfred Edersheim, there are over 456 predictions in the Bible about Jesus' life, His birth, His death, and His resurrection that were made hundreds of years before He was born that all came true. The probability of one person fulfilling all of those is the same as 1 in 10 to the power of 157, or 10 with 157 zeros after it. To help us understand the magnitude of that number, mathematics and astronomy professor Peter W. Stoner gives this illustration. He says if one person would fulfill just 16 out of the 456 of those predictions, it would be the same as filling a giant ball with quarters and asking a person with a blindfold on to reach inside and take out the 1 quarter you placed a red mark on. Well, you may be asking, how do I know how big this ball of quarters is? Well, I hope you're sitting down for this, because it's not as big as a basketball or our planet or even the sun. The ball would be as big as Neptune's orbit around the sun, the furthest planet from the sun in our solar system. All that to say that you can trust the Bible. The Bible contains timeless wisdom and truths that can help us navigate life, our careers, and relationships, even today. But most importantly, it helps us encounter Jesus.
The house feels calm, like the rhythm of their life has settled into a familiar tune. He gets home from work, tired, grabs a glass and fills it with water. She greets him warmly. He starts the conversation with a smile. "So, about the holiday trip. It's coming up fast," he says casually. "Well, I was thinking we could really take this time to rest. Just you and me. No work, no distractions." She tilts her head, her expression softening. "I've been looking forward to it too," she says. "But I just need a little more time to finish my stories. I want to have enough done before we leave." He raises an eyebrow, his tone playful but with a hint of concern. "Enough? Don't you already have like 1,000,000 stories saved up?" She laughs, but there's a spark of seriousness in her reply. "Not enough." He watches her for a moment, the weight of her passion evident, though he doesn't entirely understand it. With a small nod, he lets it go for now.
In his book called Trust, Henry Cloud tells a story of when he was on an out-of-town trip in the South. While he was stopped at a gas station, he asked someone there for directions to where he needed to go. They told him, "Sure, just go down the hill and take a right when you see the big dog in the front yard." He thought to himself, "What? The big dog in the front yard? You don't think it would be better to give me a landmark that isn't going to just get up and chase a squirrel at any moment?" But as the story goes, he follows the directions. He goes down the hill, and sure enough, there was the big dog in the front yard exactly the way it was described. He turned right there and he made it safely to his destination. He then asks this question in his book: how could the lady have been so certain the dog would be there? Because of one of the most important aspects of trust. The dog had a track record. He'd been in the same place at the same time of day every afternoon for years. It was his spot, and he was never not there. You could depend on it. In his book, Henry Cloud identifies track record as an essential element that builds trust. When someone has a positive track record, that builds trust. Talking about this concept, he says, what someone has done before is usually the best indicator of what will happen next time. Trust is not simply given, it's earned. People must show that they are worthy of it. And that only happens through incremental performance over time.
It's late. She's seated at her table, toys neatly placed around her laptop. Her voice begins steady and confident as she brings the story to life. But suddenly, a sharp pain slices through her hand, spreading up her arm. She gasps, instinctively clutching her wrist. "No," she murmurs, "come on. Just one more," she mutters, picking up a toy. As soon as she raises her arm, the pain stabs harder this time, making her wince. The dream feels so close, yet suddenly out of reach. Later in the bathroom, she stands at the sink with her toothbrush in hand. Her movements are clumsy, hesitant, as if any wrong twist might spark more pain. She tries to hold it firmer, but the effort causes her hand to spasm. Her mind races, torn between pride and desperation. Finally, she calls for help. "Honey, can you help me?" He comes over immediately, his expression a mix of worry and understanding. "Let me see." She gestures to her loose hair. "Can you?" He nods without hesitation, standing behind her and gently tying up her hair. She looks at him in the mirror, their eyes meeting. For a brief moment, the frustration melts away. replaced by a quiet gratitude. "Thanks," she whispers.
The great news about the Bible is that it has an amazing track record, and that's how we can know we can trust it. The moment the two men on the road to Emmaus recognized Jesus was transformational. Their grief turned into joy and their confusion to clarity. Recognizing him changed everything. They now had a renewed sense of purpose and urgency to share the good news with others. And in our lives, recognizing Jesus' presence can have a similar and profound impact. It can shift our focus from our problems to his promises, from our limitations to his limitless power. This recognition often comes through engaging with the Bible and being open to his guidance through its pages. Christian apologist C.S. Lewis says, "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it, I see everything else." When we acknowledge Jesus and allow him to guide us, we begin to see our lives and our circumstances through a new lens. Our priorities realign and we find the meaning and direction we've been looking for. This story invites us to open our hearts and our minds to Jesus' presence and to seek his guidance through the scriptures. It encourages us to recognize that we're not meant to walk alone, and that by embracing his presence and the fact that he's by our side, we can find comfort, we can find direction.
The rhythmic clinking of weights fills the living room as he finishes his final set. He glances across the room. The toys sit scattered on the table where she usually records, but she's nowhere in sight. Curiosity pulls him closer. He stands over the toys, turning one over in his hand. He frowns, trying to see the magic she sees in them. He picks up another toy, trying to mimic what she does, shifting the toy like a character, but it doesn't feel the same. "This isn't for me," he mutters, setting it down with a sigh. "She's stubborn," he says to himself, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Then he chuckles quietly. "But so am I."
Reflecting on the experience of these two men, here are just a few practical coaching questions that can help you on your journey this week. Number 1, when have you experienced a lack of direction in your life? Number 2, what do you rely on for wisdom and direction in your life? And number 3, what would it look like if you tried relying on Jesus for that direction? This week, set aside a few minutes each day to read a passage from the Bible that speaks to guidance and purpose. I'd like to share with you one as just an example. Psalms 119 verses 105 says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path." Reflect on how these words might apply to your current situation. This small habit can begin to shift your perspective and open you up to recognizing Jesus' presence in your life. I encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or need someone to talk to. Connect with me on social media for support, prayer requests, or to join the community. If you're interested in exploring these topics further, consider enrolling in our Hope Study Bible School online by visiting hopestudy.ca. There you'll find an easy-to-use online Bible study platform with several interactive guides on a variety of topics. A good place to start is the one entitled, "Can We Trust the Bible?" There you can dive deeper into understanding how the Bible can guide your life and be a source of comfort for you.
The laptop screen glows in the dim room, recording in progress. Her voice carries the warmth and enthusiasm she always brings to her stories. The toys are animated in front of the camera, moving fluidly as if by magic. But her arms stay still, resting on her lap. Behind the table, crouched low and hidden from view, he sits on the floor. His large hands move the toys with surprising grace, bringing them to life as she narrates. He listens to her voice, adjusting the characters' movements to match her words. the glow of the laptop illuminating their faces. The video plays back, her voice strong and clear, the toys moving just as they imagined. There's more to life than walking through challenges alone.
If we think of life as a voyage across the sea, without a compass or stars to navigate by, we're really at the mercy of the winds and the waves. But with the reliability of a guide, we can chart a course through even the stormiest waters. The Bible serves as that compass, and Jesus is the North Star, constant, and He guides us towards our true destination. There's more to life than just wandering aimlessly. Discover the hope and guidance that comes from walking with Jesus every day. What if you invited Jesus to walk with you on your journey? What if you allowed the Bible to be your guide through life's uncertainties? How might that change your perspective of both the challenges and the joys that lie ahead? As you contemplate these questions, remember that you don't have to navigate life's complexities alone. I'd like to take a moment to invite you to partner with Hope Channel Canada as an agent of hope. Here are 3 ways you can do that. Number 1, through your prayers. By praying for this ministry, you are partnering with us and asking God to use programs like this and many others on Hope Channel Canada to share the good news about Jesus with Canadians. Number 2, through your time. If you are able to volunteer, please see agentsofhope.ca for more information on how to do so and the areas where you can give of your time. And number 3, through your financial support. Your financial contribution helps Hope Channel Canada with ongoing production costs as we continue to provide valuable, life-changing programming across Canada. You can donate online by visiting agentsofhope.ca. And thank you for partnering with us and making Hope Channel Canada possible.